Welcome to SDN Tech Networking Podcast, world's first human-curated AI podcast.
Welcome to our deep dive. We're tackling the MITRE ATT&CK framework today. I know a lot of you are really curious about this whole thing and how it can help us really understand cyber attack. So I'm excited to dig in with all of you. Our mission today is to unpack all this and really understand how valuable this framework is, especially in today's world. It seems like this is a really hot topic in cybersecurity.
Absolutely. And MITRE is more than just the attack framework. They are a not-for-profit organization dedicated to solving problems for a safer world. They apply their expertise in all kinds of different fields, like cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, sensors, all to tackle some really critical challenges.
Wow, a safer world. That's ambitious. But for this deep dive, let's focus on the star of the show, the attack framework. What does ATT&CK even stand for, and why is it so important?
So ATT&CK stands for Adversarial Tactics, Techniques, and Common Knowledge. It's like a global knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques, all based on what we've actually seen in the real world. Think of it as a library that is constantly updated with how attackers are really operating out there.
So it's more about understanding how attackers are acting right now than trying to block every single attack.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It breaks down the steps they take, from that initial access all the way to their objective. And what I really like is how it's structured. They use a matrix format to categorize all these tactics and techniques. And then they even give real-world examples to show us how these things are used.
Oh, I'm interested in this matrix format.
Yeah.
Is it like a spreadsheet of cyber attacks with each row a different tactic? In each column a technique or something?
Yeah, that's a great way to visualize it. It's called the ATT&CK matrix, and it maps tactics, which represent the goals, to the techniques, which are the methods to achieve those goals. And it gives this really comprehensive view that helps organizations understand what they're up against.
Okay, so the tactics are like the why, the attacker's goals, and then the techniques or the how, what they do to achieve it.
You got it. And a lot of people don't realize this framework doesn't just list these things out, it shows how they're connected, like a roadmap.
I like that. It shows the connections, not just the pieces. And speaking of frameworks, I know a lot of security folks use the cyber kill chain. How does that relate to MITRE ATT&CK? Do they work together?
It's a great question, and I think a lot of people get these two confused. The cyber kill chain is linear. It focuses on those stages of an attack, from reconnaissance to the objective. MITRE ATT&CK is broader, it's nonlinear, and focuses more on the behavior and the techniques across those various stages.
It's almost like a deeper dive then.
Exactly. You're getting into the nitty-gritty.
Cool. So it sounds like they complement each other.
Yeah.
Not replace.
Absolutely. Two different perspectives on the same problem.
So we've been talking a lot about the framework and how it works. But why should enterprises care about this? What makes this so relevant today?
Well, cyber threats are constantly evolving, and they're becoming much more complex and sophisticated, especially now. With IT and operational technology converging, the stakes have never been higher. And that's where I think MITRE ATT&CK really shines.
So this isn't just some theoretical framework. You're saying it has real-world applications that can actually improve security?
Yeah, exactly. It can really transform their security posture.
Okay, how so? How can it actually help?
Well, it can help with proactive security by identifying vulnerabilities. It can help improve their detection and response by aligning their tools and processes. And it can also just enhance their overall security posture by helping them understand the techniques that are common against their industry specifically.
Okay, let's break those down a bit. Let's start with proactive security.
Sure.
What does that look like?
So imagine you're securing a power grid by mapping the vulnerabilities to the techniques in ATT&CK. You can anticipate how attackers might exploit those weaknesses, so you can model the potential threats and strengthen your defenses.
So it's about getting ahead of the attackers, figuring out what they might do,
Yeah.
and stopping them before they can even try.
Yes, it shifts the focus from reacting to being proactive.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what about detection and response? How does that tie into ATT&CK?
So aligning your tools and processes to ATT&CK can dramatically enhance how well you can detect and respond to threats.
So if we design our security systems to recognize those techniques, we're more likely to catch them early on.
Exactly. You're basically speaking the attacker's language then, and translating their actions into insights you can act on.
Okay, and then the last one, understanding common techniques by industry. How does that work?
So if you know what techniques are common in your industry, You can tailor your defenses accordingly. You're not just trying to protect against everything. You're focusing on the most likely threats.
So kind of like a personalized playbook.
Exactly.
Awesome. This is starting to come together for me. But how do they actually implement all this knowledge? Are there tools that leverage this framework?
There are, and I think one great example is Splunk. It's a security, information, and event management platform.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Splunk. I could see how a data analysis platform would help here.
Absolutely. They can ingest all kinds of security events and logs, and then map them to specific techniques.
Almost like a detective piecing together clues.
You got it. They connect the dots, and they can also visually represent those attack patterns based on MITRE, so you get a much clearer picture.
So instead of just seeing a ton of alerts, you can understand what they mean in context.
Exactly. It helps you prioritize those alerts and respond more effectively.
Awesome. But that must be a lot of data, even with Splunk. How does MITRE ATT&CK help with all that?
Well, MITRE ATT&CK acts as a framework to organize it all. It helps them cut through the noise and focus on what's most important.
I see. So MITRE ATT&CK and tools like Splunk really work together to help organizations proactively defend themselves.
They do, and I think what's really important to remember is that MITRE ATT&CK itself is constantly evolving. It keeps pace with all the new threats and techniques.
Yeah, that's a good point. Cybersecurity never stands still. Well, this has been incredibly insightful. We've really gone deep on the framework, but we need to take a break. When we come back, I want to get into the specifics of how this is all structured and applied. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. I'm excited to get into some more of the practical stuff today. Last time we ended by talking about how individuals can even use this framework to improve their cybersecurity. So let's start there. How can everyday people like me actually use MITRE ATT&CK to protect ourselves?
It's a great question. And while it's mainly designed for organizations, the principles can be applied to everyday life.
Okay, cool. So how?
Well, at its heart, MITRE ATT&CK is all about understanding how attackers are thinking and how they actually act in the real world. By understanding those tactics, we can be more vigilant.
So it's like being able to spot those red flags. That might indicate an attack is happening. Like how would MITRE ATT&CK help me avoid falling for a phishing email?
Okay, so say you get an email and something just seems off. Maybe you don't recognize the sender. Or there's a weird link. Understanding the initial access tactic and all the different techniques that fall under that, like phishing, can help you look at that email differently.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
You'll probably scrutinize that email more. You might hover over the link. You'll definitely think twice before clicking anything.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's almost like having a checklist in my head of things to watch out for.
That's a good way to think about it. And it goes deeper than that. Binary attack actually gives you information about the specific techniques and how they work, with examples from the real world.
Oh, that's cool. So I can learn how phishing actually works, not just that it exists.
Exactly. And that knowledge helps you make better decisions.
About how you act online and how you protect yourself.
Yep. Like take credential access, brute force attacks, credential stuffing, all things attackers do to steal your logins.
Oh, yeah. That's scary.
It is. But understanding how they do those things might make you think twice about using the same password everywhere.
True. And make me turn on that two-factor authentication.
That's the idea.
But this all seems pretty complex. Do I need to memorize the whole ATT&CK matrix or something?
No, not at all. Just start by familiarizing yourself with the basics. MITRE's website has great summaries of the tactics and techniques. It's a good starting point.
Okay, that's a relief. I can do that. Anything else that would be helpful to someone like me?
Read those real-world examples. They're really interesting, and they show you how these attacks happen.
Oh, yeah. I like those. They make it all seem more real. But even if I do all this, I can't be 100% safe.
That's true. There's no such thing as perfect security. But understanding MITRE ATT&CK can make a big difference. It shifts your mindset.
From reactive to proactive.
You got it.
So be aware of the threats, learn how attackers operate, and protect myself before they even target me.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your own security.
I like that. Well, this has been really helpful. I think we've done a good job breaking this down. But now I want to go back to organizations for a minute. You said that MITRE ATT&CK could help them enhance their security posture. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So one way it can do that is by helping them do what's called threat modeling.
Threat modeling. What is that?
It's like a process where you identify all the potential threats and vulnerabilities
Yeah.
that exist in your organization. You're basically trying to think like an attacker.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm putting myself in their shoes
That's the idea.
and trying to figure out how I would attack.
Exactly.
And how does MITRE ATT&CK help with that?
Well, it provides a framework to guide you through that process.
Okay. Can you give me an example? Let's say I'm a security analyst at a company that makes those smart devices for your home. How would I use MITRE ATT&CK to model threats against our products?
Okay, well, you might start with the initial access tactic and look at all the techniques under that. Since we're talking about smart devices, you'd probably focus on things like exploiting vulnerabilities in internet-facing services. Yeah. Or maybe supply chain attacks.
So I'd be looking for ways that attackers could get into our devices, either through flaws in our software or by targeting our manufacturing process.
Yes, exactly.
And then I could use that information.
To improve our security.
Right. You can prioritize what needs to be fixed first.
Okay, that makes sense. It's taking the framework and applying it to your specific situation.
You got it.
Cool. So that's threat modeling. But you also said something about detection and response. How can MITRE ATT&CK help with that?
So remember how we talked about aligning your security tools and processes?
So the ATT&CK framework.
Yes. Okay.
So let's say you're worried about attackers using malware to get into your network and stay there. MITRE ATT&CK's persistence tactic shows you all the different ways they might do that.
Okay, like what?
Like creating scheduled tasks or modifying registry keys, things like that.
So if my security team knows about those techniques, we can set up our systems to look for them.
You got it.
So if someone tries to modify the registry, we'll get an alert.
Exactly. And you can respond before it's too late.
It's like setting traps and waiting for the attackers to fall into them.
That's a great way to think about it. And the best part is everyone on your team will be on the same page because you're all using the same framework.
Yeah, that makes sense. You need to speak the same language when you're trying to stop these guys.
You do. So MITRE ATT&CK can really help organizations get ahead of the attackers.
Absolutely. It sounds like it can be a valuable tool for learning and professional development, too.
Oh, for sure. It's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to learn more about cybersecurity and improve their skills.
So it's not just a reference guide.
It's a learning tool.
How so?
You can use it to identify your weak spots, figure out what you need to learn more about, and you can even use it to practice, like by simulating attacks based on the matrix.
Well, that's cool. You can actually put what you've learned into practice.
Exactly. And that's so important in cybersecurity because things are changing all the time.
Agreed. Well, this has been really insightful. I'm starting to see why everyone is talking about MITRE ATT&CK.
It's a powerful framework. And what's really exciting is that it's constantly evolving. They're always updating it to stay ahead of the bad guys.
That's a perfect segue into what we'll be talking about next time, the future of MITRE ATT&CK and how it's being used to tackle some of these new threats, like the ones we're seeing from IT and OT converging. Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. We've learned a lot about MITRE ATT&CK, from how it's structured to how it can be used by both individuals and organizations. But the thing about cybersecurity is it never stands still. So our understanding of threats has to keep up. Last time you mentioned IT and operational technology converging and how that's creating all these new challenges. Can you talk more about that? What makes this convergence so tough from a security standpoint?
Well, in the past, IT systems and OT systems were pretty isolated. OT systems are things like industrial control systems or critical infrastructure. But now, with everything getting connected and the rise of the industrial Internet of Things, those lines are blurring.
So we're connecting systems
Yeah.
that were never designed to talk to each other. And that's creating vulnerabilities.
Exactly. And these vulnerabilities can have really serious consequences. Imagine an attacker getting into a control system that manages a power grid or a water treatment plant. The potential for damage is huge.
Yeah, that's scary stuff. So how does MITRE ATT&CK help with this? How can it address those threats in these converged environments?
Well, MITRE realized this was a problem, and they actually developed an extension to the framework. It's called ATT&CK for ICS, which stands for Industrial Control Systems.
ATT&CK for ICS. So it's a specialized version, designed specifically for those industrial control systems.
But that's right. It includes tactics and techniques that are relevant to those unique environments, like manipulating physical processes, disrupting equipment, or even compromising safety systems.
Right, because attacking a server is totally different from attacking a power plant.
Exactly.
So you need a different approach.
You need a different framework.
Can you give me an example of a tactic or technique in ATT&CK for ICS?
Sure. One is called inhibit response function. This focuses on how attackers try to stop an organization from detecting or responding to an attack.
So basically, they're trying to buy themselves more time to do damage.
That's the idea. And in those ICS environments, that could mean disabling alarms, mess with sensor readings, or even prevent safety systems from working.
That's messed up. So organizations need to understand these ICS-specific threats.
They do, so they can prepare their defenses
Right.
and respond effectively if something happens.
Okay, so ATT&CK for ICS helps organizations secure these really important systems.
It does.
And it looks like MITRE is staying ahead of the curve.
Like so.
Constantly adapting the framework to address new threats.
What other areas do you see MITRE ATT&CK being crucial in the future? Well, one area I'm really interested in is cloud security. As more and more organizations move to the cloud, securing those environments becomes super important.
Yeah, that makes sense. The cloud has its own unique challenges.
It does.
How is MITRE ATT&CK helping with that?
Well, they developed ATT&CK for cloud, which is specifically designed for cloud environments. It considers things like multi-tenancy, shared responsibility models, serverless computing.
So it's like a cloud-specific version of the framework
Exactly.
that helps organizations understand and mitigate those threats.
Right.
It's all about adapting to those new environments.
That's one of the biggest strengths of MITRE ATT&CK. It's adaptable, not a one-size-fits-all solution.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. We've gone from its origins to how it's used by individuals, organizations, and even specific areas like ICS and cloud security.
It has been a great discussion. I hope everyone listening now understands how valuable and versatile MITRE ATT&CK is.
Me too. But I want to leave everyone with one last thought. MITRE ATT&CK is a great tool, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. It's not a magic solution. The key is to be willing to learn, to adapt, and to work together. That's how we'll stay ahead of these threats.
I agree. Cybersecurity is a team effort. We have to share knowledge if we want to make a difference.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into MITRE ATT&CK. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe.